Hi everyone, I'm Gina Minardi and I'm a licensed therapist who got fed up with therapy. This is a one-woman show about my journey of finding the spaces between non-traditional approaches of healing. What I learned is that there's no one right way to heal, and you truly are your best resource. Therapists and healers are meant to support you on your path, but they don't have all of the answers. You do. This show is about the spaces between laughter, tears, thoughts, ego, soul, messy growth, and moments of joy. It's about personal liberation, inner knowing, and the tools that get you there. I will cover topics that make many of us uncomfortable and interviewing people who are willing to go there. I've spent thousands of hours listening to human beings navigate their life story, from rehabs in Malibu to homeless shelters in East LA, and now my private practice. It has been some of the most profound, painful, and beautiful moments in my life. Thank you so much for joining me. Hi, folks and friends, and whoever is joining today. I'm sitting here with one of my best girlfriends, Eulalie Welsh. She is a soul, spirit, witch sister. We've been through a lot together. And I really wanted to bring her on today for her deep wisdom and us having a lot of conversations about what it means to be a woman and I would say major talks about self-abandonment. And this seems to be a theme, I would say, in my sessions with girlfriends, and particularly with women. I don't listen to men, and I'm not saying that men don't self-abandon, because they do, but it's really a predominant theme with women. How we've been conditioned as caretakers, as nurturers, as mothers. So yeah, Lee and I are just going to rip and see where this goes today. She recently just listened to my last podcast episode. So I'm actually going to start with that, Lee. What came up for you when you listened to that episode? Sorry, we're just really...
Well, hello. Let's just get into it.
Yeah, let's just get into it. Hi people. Hi, friends.
Hi, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Geez, Gina, listening to that, I also want to note that I listened to it in the car with my girls.
Oh, wow.
So that's, by the way, my children know everything. But as you know, that's how I operate with the girls. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. There were two parts to it that I found to be so therapeutic, and it actually opened up a huge conversation for us in the car. Wow, it's like the second I look at you, I'm just like, and now I'll start crying.
But that's what we do, and it's okay. And there we can shed all the tears together.
Yeah. So the first part that just rocked me with that podcast was truly your incredible commitment to being honest, just completely honest. And in every aspect, like, you know, there's ways that we like to dance around things in life, and we kind of tell stories in a certain way that that sheds a more positive light on our own beings. And I know that's, you know, also a learned egoic practice. But, you know, just listening to that with the girls, especially in the car, and the first part kind of touching on what had happened with your cyst, mm-hmm. and that process of just going to the doctor, and also acknowledging what it was, and then kind of looking outward to Western medicine and going, this is what, you know, the approach I'm going to take. But also, like you said, doing all the research and sitting with everything that it felt to you was internal. I mean, why do our bodies do the things that they do? And so that being a segue into, you know, abuse, essentially. And I have my own, you know, sexual trauma, physical trauma. And again, something that I don't often, you know, actually, when I first discovered it, I was like telling everybody. this happened to me. I'm telling everybody. And then going, oh, I wish I hadn't told everybody, and not really being able to process that in a way, that allowed that space that we create, even just by ourselves, to like actually feel that vulnerability that comes with that kind of honesty. That's a lot. The aftermath, the quake of when you speak that truth, and I guess to stay on topic, like the way that kind of segued for the girls and I to open up a conversation around my trauma, my abuse, and things that we've already discussed, but to further that in a situation that happened with Gigi. She's my youngest, and had a really uncomfortable, traumatic experience with one of my close girlfriend's older sons a few years back that has forever changed her. And, she was 5. And it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't so much that the conversation that you were creating around it was, sparking pain for her. It more was just, I watched her little mind, and she's not, she's 10. She's a very mature 10, I would say, in a lot of ways. But she's 10. And I watched her go, oh, okay. And then feel a little more comfortable about sort of talking about it. It opened up a conversation about it, and how she still holds anger and this mistrust, and that she still has to see him because he's in our community, and that it really bothers her. It was a crazy, thing to listen to, and giving her the space to say, you don't have to do these things or so on, but you don't have to be polite. You don't have to say hi. You don't, we can choose not to go to this event or this function or whatever, but just that she actually thinks about it probably more on a daily. Mm-hmm. And I think for her to hear that not only her mom, but also her favorite aunties have experienced similar things in different ways was really validating.
I am, of course, with you. I'm feeling so many emotions right now. I mean, like, which is why we're friends. I always feel like so much truth comes out when you and I talk. And it's just been profound for me after, listening to you, and then thinking of you and what you've gone through, and then Gigi. And between, so that's 4 of us with Layla, 3 of us going through some level of abuse and trauma in that, which I think for me is just, I don't know if profound is the right word, but there's a lot of feelings to it.
It's staggering, I think. Yeah. It's like, it's more astounding. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is such a prevalent thing. And even, okay, so in my situation with having known about my own trauma, actively working through that, talking to them about that, going to therapy, like all these things, it still happens. It's still like, oh, there's my dog.
Okay. and there is life. There is life. It's totally okay.
It's still happening.
Yeah.
But it's, you can talk about these things, and you can create awareness around it. But when you're actually physically put in a situation that challenges you in, this was somebody for her, this, in this example, was somebody that she trusted, somebody she looked up to, somebody who I trusted, but also just, it was one of those situations where it, they'd all been together and played so much in earlier years that this one time, this one thing that happened, I think it just like she froze. There's like full, you're going, but why? And when I think about that, and think back to my own experience with sexual trauma as a kid, whenever I'm put in a situation, and and it's not I'm put, it's whenever I had put myself in a very similar situation or a situation that could become similar in my adult life, which I did from adolescence on, I would go back to that place of feeling incredible fear and pain. And it was familiar. It was really like, I don't know, I see how, I see how deeply rooted trauma is, even when you are aware of it and actively working, to eradicate it. It's this, I don't know how to say it other than, remember that podcast I just sent you? And it was kind of talking about negative reinforcement. And it's this concept where we believe that when something bad happens, you have to feel that bad and then get past the bad in order to feel really good. And it's not necessary, but when that is deeply intrinsically, like, I don't know, programmed into you, it's really challenging to be able to not identify with it. And I'm listening to my little one who has had this experience, and I just sit with like, how is that going to shape every other experience in her life? How do we undo, these things that have been done unwillingly?
Well, can I ask, how did you and said friend and your friend, and the young boy
handle it?
Yeah. How'd you guys handle it?
So we came together, my girlfriend and I, and we talked about it extensively together. She was very supportive, and didn't, I appreciated the way she handled her, just hearing it, because that's a lot to hear, that's her baby too. And then the next course of action was my family, like my girls and their dad. We sat and we talked about it, and she confronted her son and they talked about it. And then as it kind of came to be, individually, separately as families, we had discussed then discussing it as two families together. So we did end up sitting with the kids, and he had to apologize. But that also came up in this conversation in the car yesterday of like, my other daughter, Layla, was just like, Mom, that was really fucked up. Like, you should never have done that to her. She should never have had to sit with that. It was like half-ass apology, and like, and it was true. He knew maybe what he had done. I know he felt shame and he felt guilt. But, as trained therapists and having been to a ton of therapy, we know that trauma and abuse doesn't just happen. Yeah. It happens because it's learned or it's happened to you. And so I really had to take that into consideration. And I'm looking at another kid, here's another child that is clearly experiencing something and has experienced something. And that's been sort of the interesting thing to kind of deal with my friend. I don't know what they talk about or how they've handled that, or if that has truly been handled or talked about. There was a letter written, and Gigi was 5. She can't read. There's stuff like that where it's like we've basically practiced avoidance with this said person, while still, and like my girlfriend and her other son, we spend time with them, but we don't spend time with her older son. And, the biggest thing with Gigi that we have committed to is like really allowing her to have space to discuss or not to discuss. Make the choices of, do you want to see these people or do you not want to see these people? Is it okay if these people come to our house? And I'm sure that people listening will have many different opinions about that, but it's like these are the things that happen within our friend groups and our communities. And I think our approach really was like, how do we love on them and hold space for them and allow them to, heal. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you really heal from that. How do we heal?
When you were talking to me, or just in that last portion, my main feeling was how to not ostracize him and how to not condemn him, because I feel one of the issues with our society and even within the Me Too movement, and I want to be very sensitive when I say this, because I know that there's already a lot of women right now that would get pretty prickly, and even within the feminist movement, we cannot just shit on men and the sort of toxic masculinity and patriarchy that they have been subjugated to, and also sexual abuse and other things that they've been subjugated to. And I'm a deep believer, and I think you are, in more of a rehabilitation versus eye for an eye, and let's, this kid is fucked and da 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 da.
No, I don't think there was ever like this kid is fucked. I think it was more of this kid like my kid doesn't want to spend time with this kid. And being her mom, I'm like, you don't have to. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah. But this kid still exists. And he's still within our tight circle of friends. And he's quite a bit older. So there's a whole, different group of people he hangs out with anyway. His mom I think that's been her journey of dealing with her kiddo and talking with him. And I haven't, it's not something we've really discussed at length, which is unlike us because we are really close. But I don't know what it's like to be on the opposing side. Yes. When your child's like the predator. I don't know what that feels like. I can only imagine. And yeah, I mean, there hasn't been any. It's a tricky thing. It's like, I'm not angry with him. I'm just more, I don't know, fear. Like, I don't want my child to have the same life experiences that I've had. Make a lot of the same choices. And granted, my parents, never discussed abuse with me because I didn't really even discover a lot of the early childhood sexual abuse until much later in my life. But, the way in which we spoke to each other, the way in which we were disciplined, all those things, there was no like, I'm so sorry I slapped you across the face, or, I'm so sorry that I berated you in this scenario. Yeah. It cut from a different cloth, different kind of people. Yeah. And I don't want to make it sound like I was horribly abused as a child. It wasn't that. It's just that definitely not the way I'm treating my kids. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I was thinking about how today my dad probably listened to this episode, or maybe not today, or, the next day, and he doesn't know this, and I was thinking about how, for me as a daughter, we're super close, and I share everything. And I was thinking about how, wow, I never shared this with him. But I think also because I had never honored it in myself as assault. It was always two young people who were fucked up, and it was just kind of sex that was not really wanted, but it was never really assault to me. And I guess what I wanted to say to you is I commend you.
And I really commend you in your openness with the girls. And I think that there are so many parents that get really and I hear this in my practice, really kind of like pinched on their age and, well, it's not appropriate to talk about these things or they're not ready yet. But the thing is, kids go through these things and there has to be space so they can heal. So
I just,
yeah.
can you imagine if you, I don't know, I guess I look at it like this. If I can't imagine if I was raised in an environment where everything that I saw happening, because I saw everything. I mean, I always saw it from the beginning.
Mhm.
I think that some people, choose to see things and don't, maybe, but I saw it all. And if somebody had just been honest with me about these things and then honest with themselves as to why they were doing them, there was so much confusion to work through. It was like, but why do we lie? I don't understand. But this is what's happened, And it's like, but no, I'm going to tell you this other story and tell you don't tell anybody that this happened.
Yeah.
Don't you dare tell anybody.
Yeah.
We'll tell them this happened. I'm like, I don't understand. It's just the layers that you have to, sort of work through. And I now as an adult, I start to see, okay, well, that was not socially acceptable. And so that's why it wasn't being talked about. But you don't know that as a kid. You just see it.
Yeah.
So you're like, if you had a parent that was going, I went out and I raged last night and I know that I'm not supposed to like do that because I need to come home and, be a really highly functioning adult.
Yes.
But it's like, there's a reason why you're laying on the couch feeling like shit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that you don't have the flu. You had 4 glasses of wine.
Yeah.
It's like and that's raging, I guess, in my
and our age now. Oh, 4 glasses of wine kills me.
Oh my God, yeah. But the thing is like, had somebody said, these are the things, it would have just taken that whole veil of mystery that you spend so much time trying to deconstruct.
Yeah.
And then you finally get to like, oh, this is the reality.
Yeah.
This is just truth.
Yeah.
And then within that, I have all these opportunities and options and choices. And that's when you are able to kind of formulate what it is you want and how you're going to be in the world. It just would take such a, beautiful, just take all that crap out of the way and give yourself this like huge step up in the world.
Yeah.
That's my approach to parenting.
I mean, it's sort of, I've been on a big Dr. Shefali trip. Obviously, you know this right now, but she wrote another book outside of the one that I'm reading, Radical Awakening. She wrote Conscious Parenting.
Yeah.
And she talks about how within conscious parenting, she's like, it is your job as a parent to, instead of just projecting and oozing your wounds all over the place, and part of that woundage is being not in integrity, not in truth. And like, oh yeah, mommy's hungover as shit, but she's going to tell you that she has the flu, and that is not, but true, not projecting and being in truth. But that is so hard for humans. And it's also so hard. I mean, again, we're a different generation, and I think our generation we're like, everybody's pro therapy and healers and intuitives and all of the things, whereas our parents, there was a lot more stifling and there was a lot more, we put this in the closet and we block the door.
But even what you were just saying, Gina, about your dad not having heard this thing and you're not having shared it with him, it's because somewhere along the line, you picked up that he has there are things that he ways he perceives you. There's a thing around you that he has like, this is who Gina is. And within that, we take ownership of the things that we are trying to project or trying to like protect other people from. And that's all learned behavior. Like our parents did that same thing to us. I just think that, like, if your dad had shared like some of maybe the shittier things that he'd done in life, it's like, okay, people fuck up, people do that. Look, my dad still loves me.
Yeah.
My dad still tries.
Yeah.
There's nobody's perfect. Like, and this concept that we have, back to that conscious parenting thing, it's like we're supposed to be emulating the people that we truly want our children to be. Like, embody that. You want the best for your kid, then love yourself enough to do the best for yourself. But those of us who didn't learn how to do that completely, are learning. And I think that's part of this entire purpose of being here, is this like deconstruct, reconstruct, do it over and over and over again. And hopefully you do it enough where it just, the next person, your kids, your, whomever, do it more quickly.
Yes.
And they get to do bigger work and something more badass because they're not going, this happened to me and I'm afraid to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, nobody wants to feel shitty.
Yeah.
And oftentimes talking about trauma, talking about woundage brings back the shitty. It's like, I know we're supposed to bring it back to let it go, but oftentimes I feel like we bring it back and we're like sitting in it.
Yeah.
Going, it's because you're re-experiencing there's aspects of it that you have to re-experience again and again and again. And I don't know. I'm like, I don't know why we hold it's. And I guess I'm coming back to like the reason I think this is because we still have this personification of self in the view of our parents, in the view of our peers and our friends, like assuming these roles. And even though we're working through them rapidly to try and break them down and diminish, it's still there. So you still have to experience those outer levels. And you might be the only person experiencing it. Like your dad might hear this and just be like, damn, Gina, why did you not fucking tell me that?
Yeah.
And why have we not discussed this before?
Yeah.
I love you. I'm so sorry that happened. Which, guaranteed that's what's coming.
Oh, 100%.
But the fear involved in having to even unveil something like that is like having to re-experience it.
Oh, yeah. And I think, and touching on to what you're saying, or I'm going to go even further. So within our family systems and then also within society and what we've been taught, particularly as women, that, well, if this thing happened to you, it sort of in some way makes you the dirty one, or it makes you
your fault.
Your fault. You whore. How'd you end up in that cabina? I was about to say cabina, Gina.
Okay, wait.
Okay. What was that?
Speaking of honesty. No, can I touch on the second thing that was in your podcast?
Yes.
You had talked about coming back and like still being high on cocaine. And Layla's in the back. She's like, go on to Gina. And I'm sitting there going, oh shit, this conversation's coming next.
I can feel everybody who's listening to us like, wow. But you know what? Truth.
I think it's hilarious because, okay, so I've been carrying this like weight of not, I don't know, especially being a mom, especially raising older kids. It's like, absolutely, I do not want them doing hard drugs.
Yeah.
I mean, drive down the street and I'm like, see that person? They're on meth. See that person? They just shot up with heroin. You see these, it's like we live in a city. This is real.
Yeah.
We also live in a beautiful part of the city next to a park. Like they get all the things, but it's challenging to go, you're going to try some of these things at some point. You might not.
Yeah.
Your dad never did.
Yeah.
Some people do, some people don't. I sure did. and yet I don't anymore. It's like, not everybody ends up in rehab or on the street. There's a fine line. Please don't do a lot of anything.
But really, I would say, going back to truth telling, that was something my parents were incredible with
Yeah.
was, well, I would say twofold. My mom sort of like instilled the fear of God in me and was
Yeah.
just like, look, you can experiment, you can do these things, but I will know if
Yeah.
you have crossed the line. And if you have crossed the line, like you will be fucked walking into this house. So I knew that. I knew that at my
Yeah.
core, like, and that's exactly what I did. As a teenager, I sort of dabbled, didn't
Yeah.
go too hard, and then, of course, continued to experiment later in life. But I think always there was this, in the world of psychology, there's the talk of the authoritarian parent or the authoritative and then passive. And really, you want to merge and be not merge, but be more in the authoritative where your kids understand that it's not a fucking free for all, that, that there are boundaries and there are, but you're also not a dictator and you're not assuming that they're not human and that they're not going to be enticed
Right there, though, the human bit. It's that we are raising humans. We're raising people.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to, deny the fact that I am human.
Yeah.
And I was a kid. I was an adolescent. I was a rambunctious teenager, so on and so forth. I also had a lot of like deep love. I mean, that's how you and I really connected over like surfing, snowboarding. Like there's so many things that you can become addicted to that are super amazingly positive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just really exposing your kids, or, well, in my case, my kids, to the really epically positive, addictive things in life.
Yeah.
Outside of, and the other things are all there. But if you're really having a great time doing wonderful things, you don't need it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really true. Yeah. And I can thank my dad also for that one. I mean, he was really the one that sort of introduced me to the adrenaline pumping, whether it was snowboarding, water skiing, surfing. And I would say those have been a great replacement in my life when I need to, which is going to bring me full circle back to, you said, how do we heal, Gina? I want to go back to that. I love though that we talked about parenting and your girls, and that was not where I was expecting to go, but I think it's so yeah. but important for everybody. And I think important for parents, and then also for us, as you and I were talking about before this conversation, saying, why do we go to those spaces, right? The space that you were saying before, like, Gina, I go to this. I wrote it down, actually. It's like white noise happens. And that comes from some sort of trauma space. And that comes from usually the developmental years of when we were kids into teens, is why we go into these kind of freeze spaces or fight and react and whatnot. So I have many questions for you, but I want to ask you, how do you think you have healed? And what do you think? And I'm not going to throw too much at you, but I know you can handle it. Where you're at in your healing journey, what's really helped you? And just like, what are some stuck points where,
Okay, wait, I'm going to write this down. Okay. Healing journey helped. I was just doing this thing today. It was like a list of questions on self-love and like how to kind of really ask yourself about your own love of self. And man, it's been a journey, healing journey. I think really got blasted open my personal journey a couple years ago, which you were there for.
Yes, I was.
Or right aftermath, after going down to Mexico and having this experience with one of the said, well, initially it was with MDMA, when it wasn't like, going down to rage. It was going down to a girlfriend's bachelorette party, and there was this, beautiful area doing these, we had this beautiful house and this private beach, and it was just like, that was the time and the place to try that. And, thinking I'm going to have this lovely evening with all these wonderful women, and instead just getting blasted with all of these memories of sexual trauma early on and it came from, this was, I think, a really poignant part of this story. It came from having a discussion with this woman. Michi was her name, and she was another guest. And Michi actually just passed away this year, which was crazy, of a heart condition. But side note, wow. So we're all spending time together laying on the beach, and Michi is, she was a lesbian, but I think, I really want to be careful here. I don't really know all the, having two kids that are identifying as lesbian at the moment.
Yeah.
I don't know what the right terminology to say, but I think she was definitely more of like a butch lesbian.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I remember laying on the sand next to her and looking at her and asking her earnestly, because we'd been hanging out all day, and just kind of came up for me just this like, Michi, how does it feel to be in your skin? Like, how do you feel in your skin? Which I don't know why I asked her that question. It was very invasive, but it just felt like the right thing to do. And she just gave me the most beautiful answer. She says, it's a struggle. Like every single day I wake up and I feel like I was born in the wrong body. And I know that my life path here is to learn how to love this body, to love this feminine form. And I don't know what it was about her words and the way that she said it so earnestly that just, it felt like this Pandora box, just almost like I could hear the chains go clink, 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 and just like get flung open in my womb area. And it was just like, whew. And up came all of this information like a purge. And it just kept coming and coming and coming. And then you ask it questions, and it came and it came and it came. It was like full awakening. I don't know. I mean, the more I think about it, I think it's more like a Kundalini awakening without knowing what it was at the time. And so much information came through that, it was hours and hours. And finally I went to sleep, and I remember waking up in the morning and just going, ah, shit. There's no going back. Like, this is all here now. Whereas it all made sense. It totally made so much in my own life make sense. But it was just like profoundly challenging to suddenly have to accept, all of the relationships that I had, and this idea of myself and the idea of my family and the stories that I've told, where it was all, not everything, but it was just, it all had to be re-examined. And it was the beginning of a very long, arduous, process of like honesty, really having to just sit and be honest. And this is where it kind of gets tricky, because it's like everybody's healing journey and everybody's trauma is their own, and we experience it from our own perspective. So it's like, that's where I think the truth and my truth sort of kind of have to come out to play, because what is the truth and what is your experience of the truth? It's just, you'll find like a car crash. It's like you interview 3 different people that witnessed it, and they all have different accounts. And it's like by listening to all 3 people, you can kind of put together, like, I think this is what happened. But, when you're dealing with your own images and your own memories, it's really, it's complex, because it also is so entangled with your emotional self. And you're suddenly now dealing with a whole new set of like anger and sadness. And I mean, and I think as we all know, anger actually leads way to, it's like this beautiful cover to sadness. It's like, there's the deep well. Wait, you said healing help? That was my next one I was going to talk to you about. I started a journey path into healers, essentially, spiritual healers, therapy, intuitives, all sorts of different kinds of healing. Because when I got blasted, all sorts of different things happened. I became what I would say is like psychically inclined. Probably from the outside looked like a psychotic break. Cool. You went to Mexico, did some drugs, and came back insane.
I told you that when I went home after I then got blasted with you, and I came home and I Googled psychotic break versus, even though I had gone to school for therapy, I was like, psychotic break versus spiritual or psychic awakening. And you know what? The definition of the two are very, very similar.
And you know, and you and I've actually talked a lot about this. I don't think that they're very far off.
No.
I think that it's just the kind of support you're able to receive through this process. Because when you're suddenly aware of so many other things, and I'm talking like dimensions. God damn, what is going on? And then there's this whole, you know, having to kind of come back and find grounding.
Yeah.
I'd say that's equally, it's been, you know, as much of my healing journey, just finding the grounding in it all as like dealing with all the things that have happened. And I think as I had experienced all that trauma, I was also blasted enough to know that trauma came from like so many, just such a deep line of family lineage. Yeah. And it had been passed down and passed down and passed down. And I was just sitting here going, you know, just as we were talking, like about Gigi and all these things, like this is our time to just shatter that trauma cord, or as I always saw it, as an anchor chain that is just, that chink got snapped.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. But it's so true. I'm losing my train of thought, but I wanted to go back to the anchor, breaking it. Oh, that's what I've been feeling so much with all of my different medical issues that came up, and really establishing more of a relationship with my womb. And something that I said years ago, I remember a friend, actually, Leah, was giving me a massage, and she was kind of doing energy work, and she went over my womb. And I remember, and her hands were just hovering above my womb, and I just started sobbing. And I was sobbing, and I was sobbing, and I was sobbing. And I remember going home to Santa Cruz and saying to my brother, I'm holding something from mom. Do you know if mom was sexually abused or she had assault? And Joe said, you know, I think that she did, but she never talked to us about it. And what my realization has been as of late has really been exactly what you're saying, which is this like taking that anchor and smashing it into a million bazillion pieces. And even if I don't have children, but just for myself and for whatever, you know, my ripple effect in the world is it's so important. I mean, I think it's everything.
I think that there's so much necessity in, you know, as we were talking about this healing journey around identifying these things, and just, you know, as you were saying about your mom, it's like whether or not you have to go back and actually know that, I think to know that there's more likeliness that those things did happen.
Yeah.
And these are places that, as you are doing your healing work now, and you're, as somebody who's like Leah, for example, who's sitting there over your womb, we are able to relieve these things for one another. We are able to hold space for each other. We're able to do this healing work without that necessity to know.
Yeah.
There's this, and I guess when I was saying there's so much necessity, it's like, I think that's kind of a problem.
I do too.
Because I feel like, I don't know, we get so hyper focused on the issues. This is where we were talking about earlier, like this negative reinforcement of going back to what the issue was. And that can hold a lot of energy just in itself. And I think the real work is just knowing that that energy has existed and we carry it within ourselves. And, whatever the ancestral lineage trauma may be, it's probably in there somewhere with everybody.
Yeah.
And it is all of our individual work to kind of just do our own auditing. And sometimes it happens when you're least expecting it. That's also part of that healing. It's like allowing yourself to be vulnerable, and really being honest is the other huge one. It's like when we look at these things, we see the things we create. It's just like in that moment of seeing it, that's cutting that anchor line. That's just like allowing that little boat that's been bobbing there to just go, all right, magic airship gone.
Yeah. But to your point, it's interesting because you and I have both talked about doing ayahuasca.
Yep.
And interestingly enough, one of the reasons we've talked about wanting to do ayahuasca is almost feeling like we need to identify that thing. We need, and I want to hear from you, because for me, it's always, there's still things in me after all of the therapy, intuitives, hypnotherapy, I've done it all, and feeling like, well, but maybe I need to make a connection to that thing or whatever that is that's kind of holding me in a space of being self-critical or self-abandoning or not loving enough to my body and all of those things. But also I very much agree with what you're saying, which is the over-identification with the thing is there's too much energy in that.
Well, back to your podcast the other day, it was just like, or yesterday, it was, we all vacillate on this, like, are we doing enough? Are we not doing enough? It's like self-flagellation. Yeah. And then like, I'm a narcissist because I love myself. It's just like, there's such a weird autonomy between all of it. But this does bring me back to the where I'm stuck. Is after doing all of this work, after, being in therapy for however long and seeking healers and like so on and so forth, doing the energy work, doing the body work, it's really become apparent to me that, and this kind of also brings me back to even what we were talking about with Gigi, that identifying with it, but also talking about it and accessing it and letting go of it, all these things, those are all, other ways of theoretically working through things. A lot of it, truly is the distinction between like the emotional letting go and the mental letting go. And I get stuck in the space of I'm working so fucking hard on letting go and it not just letting go. And I actually don't think it's necessary to go to these extremes, but now that you brought up the ayahuasca, I am going to ceremony for the first time on Friday. And I have this feeling as I've, been working up towards it that I'm like, I already know all the things I need to know.
Yeah.
I know them. But it doesn't mean that I am accessing them. And I have been so actively working on trying to access them that I'm surrendering myself to a new vehicle and allowing myself to be present with that and receive different information that's likely the same information from a different vehicle.
Mm-hmm. And and is your hopes, or do you have hopes that with this new vehicle, that you'll be able to access different points within the self?
Yes.
Yeah. And I also, can I ask again, not so many questions, but what are you wanting to access?
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Okay, people. Yeah. Okay.
So for me personally, I think, having kind of come through this pandemic and worked through all of these like personal life issue things, like relationship, basically went through a slew of relationships over the last 3 years. I was in a 3-year-long relationship, and then that ended pretty poorly. And there was a lot of like, it's funny, I find myself filtering myself here when I'm like, be honest.
It's hard.
And it is hard.
Yeah.
It's super hard. I feel like I had a pretty shitty relationship for, that 3-year relationship was really hard. And I think, it came on the tail end of all that work that, coming out of Mexico and having like this family reorganization thing happen where I had, a real want to have a support system and structure, and kind of dove into this relationship and the family within that relationship. And it came with its own bag of wounding. It came with its own, issues. And it took me, 3 years to kind of go, these aren't mine. I have my own shit. And then, went into another relationship, and then another relationship. And I have this tendency to like jump into relationships with all the positivity and hope and like, this is great. It's going to be great. And this person is wonderful. And I don't take the time to get to know these people truly. What I'm doing is abandoning myself for this idea of love. And I think, this current relationship has really showcased to me how I've been operating from this like primitive place, even though I have a big vocabulary and a lot of communication skills around, relating and being able to talk about what I would like in relationship and how I would like to be, giving and how I would like to be receiving and all the things. And yet it gets to this place where at some point I stop being honest and I stop truly communicating for fear of like hurting somebody's feelings or God knows what. There's probably a long list of things. Yeah. But the point is, I get to this place and I'm realizing this is like old shit. This is old, deep stuff that comes back to that little girl who got hurt and learned all these ways of being, of protecting myself. And it's like, I have worked so hard through them, but I keep re-experiencing them and I keep but then inflicting them essentially. It's like, I don't know that I actually can be in a relationship. And I don't know that any relationship that I've been in has ever really gotten the full me. I don't know that I've been operating at full me.
Do you think you've gotten the full you? Like when I ask you that in the sense of your relationship to self.
I think that loving... there's something deep down there that's like, I actually really like myself. Like, I feel like I really love myself, but And then no, I don't. Then I'm like, wow, I might actually hate myself because I haven't allowed all the parts of self to be present. And there's, that's operating from like some mega fear space of like, if I'm a freak in bed and I'm an excellent house cleaner and, all these like things that I'd like to show you that I'm good at, but also that I can be deeply depressed and that I have like, this is where the white noise comes in.
Like, it's really,
the trauma is real.
Yeah.
There's like, there's some,
I felt it in my body. Yeah. I felt it.
That I know it's there. So
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It's like, I'm trying to access that part of me because I don't even think I'm operating at full capacity. And therefore it's like, how the hell am I doing anything? So that's why I think I'm stuck. Somewhere deep down there, I got real stuck and I've learned how to theoretically unstick, and yet it still happens. I still abandon myself. I also had is very painful cyst that last full moon. You and I were hanging out and I'm like, what's up with my womb? What's up with your womb? I wonder if that's how we should greet women from here on out. How's your womb?
How's your womb today? My womb is kind of fucked this week. And how is yours? Yeah. Oh man, there's so much that I want to ask. Okay, I gotta slow myself. Because there's that part that you and I have talked about where the essence of who we are and the truth of who we are is always there. And it's always accessible. And usually it's accessible when we slow down enough, whether that's through silence, a deep meditation practice, or breath work. And again, I'm going to be annoying when I say this, it's that space between. So that's really... and it's interesting because, and it's not me challenging the ayahuasca, because I'm very interested in ayahuasca and I've been very pulled to do it myself.
I love it though when you do this, because this is the part I love about our friendship where it gives me room to really consider different views, different thoughts.
Yeah. That somehow, and I'm wondering out loud if you have allowed Eulalie to slow down enough and breathe enough and not self-abandon enough. And I say this all with love, and you know that, to access that point. Ooh, I just got like full body.
Honey, no, absolutely not. 100% no. And let's be very real here too. When I have deep reverence for this particular plant medicine.
Yes.
I have that for all kinds of medicine, really, like mushrooms. I mean, fuck, LSD can do it for you too.
Totally.
But I have even more reverence for people who can go sit on like a 10-day, silent retreat and do the damn work. and listen, it's not that I cannot do it. It's that we're sitting in my particular home, in my particular situation. I'm like, I've got 2 kids, both are starting school again. I've got a guy who's trying to move out. His life's falling apart. There's all these things. It's like, what time do I get for myself? I've looked into all these different kinds of retreats, and realistically, taking 2 days to go do this and maybe get a little blasted, but like, I don't look at it like blasted. I'm looking at it like maybe I get slapped upside the face, and it's like, hey, grandma's coming in to say, this is what you need to be prioritizing. This is how, because I can sit for 30 minutes a day, but I'm not accessing my own information. It's like, I don't know what it is. I don't know why I feel that I need a reset, but I've definitely gotten to this point where I'm like, I need a fucking reset. Yeah. I'm not implementing the tools that I know in a slow, strategic way to make healthy new, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm following you on all of that. And I think that sometimes it is just an intuitive knowing in that maybe you need the sort of freight train approach. And again, and I don't want to house ayahuasca as a freight train, because I want to be so mindful that it's a medicine and that it's a deeply spiritual experience, at least from what I've heard from but yeah, there's something in you that knows that you have to go really deep to potentially have a full reset. That right now, the, dare I say, subtlety in because meditation, well, and breath work in particular can also be its own sort of like where you just, I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
speaking of getting blasted, I mean, as I told you at the Joe Dispenza, I mean, that was
Yeah.
one of the trippiest weeks of my life, and the amount of information that came through, and wondering if I was in this reality or another reality. And but to your point, I think it's about, and also what the show is all about, trusting yourself and knowing what is potentially a good next step for you, not what anybody else says to you, but what Eulalie needs.
Well, this has been an interesting part too, because I think that it's hard for me to take time for myself. It's really hard for me to go, I'm going to go do this thing. And it almost did take a like, I'm going to do this thing that's big, but quietly saying that, that I was able to just like go, no, I'm taking this seriously. I'm doing this detox of, these things in order to get to this place, to do that. And this is me taking the time for myself and genuinely trying not to have expectations or hopes through it, but really hoping that what comes through for me is that awareness of like being able to prioritize myself over, not over, but like just first, so that I can take care of other people, because I take care of so many other people.
Hi, friends. I just wanted to take a quick break and thank you for tuning in. I love making this podcast for you, and I hope you love listening. If you do, the best way to show it is leaving a review, especially on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much in advance, and now back to the show. Let's talk about that. Caretaking.
Yeah.
So let's just talk as two women being, and I want to talk about anger with caretaking, because I feel that it's something that a lot of women, we've got a lot of anger around it, because I feel we have been so conditioned to be caretakers. Any thoughts or feelings on that? And not that all caretaking is bad. Caretaking can be loving and nurturing and wonderful, but not when it's at the expense of yourself.
Well, and I think that's where I was going with when I was talking about these relationships that I've been in. I think I find I meet people who are very attracted to the caretaking side of myself. That I'm a mom. That I, am domesticated in that way. That that I enjoy. But I enjoy that, with my kids and with my, friends and even with my partners, but not to an extent that it's become. And I find that caretaking for me is an exchange. It's an energetic exchange, and it's a gift of, something I can do and give. But when it's demanded, I am incredibly angry, and it touches on a lot of that, like deep down womb anger, where I'm just like, oh, hell no. No. And it's funny because it actually incites the opposite experience. I don't want to be anybody's, full-time caretaker, but I want to care for people. The weird balance. It's like I enjoy things, but I also want to have that in return. It's like, where is that exchange? Where is that balance? And how is it that like some people feel so okay with just the taking of, like, That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Why did I not learn that one?
Mm-hmm.
But also to say that too, Gina, it's not that, I mean, I'm being sarcastic, but it's like that comes from not being taken care of properly, really, as a child. And then you don't believe that anybody else is going to fulfill that for you. So you fulfill that for you. Mm-hmm. And in some ways that's healthy. And in some ways that can be a real detriment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because you end up in so many ways, or at least I'll just speak for myself. You just end up caretaking kind of everybody in a different way. And
you're like the all.
Yeah.
Come on in. I got you.
I got you.
Yeah. But then when you don't have anything to give anymore, you're like, fuck, okay, come on in. I got you too.
And by the way, I don't have any boundaries, so I've got you and you and you. And I'm going to also get really angry at myself in the process because and something you and I talked about in our cystic weekend together during that full moon, and having our dear friend with us who was also going through her own cystic journey before she had to go into surgery for it. And I think there was a real common thread, which wasn't just actually personal just to us. It's a collective issue. Mm-hmm. It's a collective, and I would say more female issue of over caretaking, over nurturing, and self-abandoning in the process. And that self-abandonment can come through as so many things, drinking and not slowing down, or saying yes to everything, not speaking our truth and being overly kind of nice and polite. And
it can also get to such an extent that you're so clouded you don't even know what real slowing down actually is.
Hell yes. Yeah.
And for, people like you and I who are like, go, 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 clean, organized, all the things. It's like, it's hard to know when it's okay to slow down if your operating system hasn't been operating like that, maybe ever. Mm-hmm. It's like slowing down doesn't always feel good.
Yeah.
I get bored with, I'm like, I'm reading a book. I love reading. But right now, if I'm telling myself I'm going to read, I can't fucking read this book. This book is horrible. Why would I want it? It's just like this whole mental breakdown of bullshit. It's weird. I don't really understand it.
I do, which is why we're best friends. I totally understand it. I so understand it, which is why, it's really now for me, it is a practice. Like, when I talk to my clients, and you're not a client, you're my best girlfriend, but you have to have a practice of. And I remember years ago, we were coming back from a trip in Mammoth, and we had this really sort of like blasty moment in the car together, and so much came up, and there was so much shared, and trauma came up, and you said, Gina, don't go home and clean. And I was like, bitch, I'm going to clean my whole house. I'm going to clean it, and I'm going to bleach it. And
but you said it on the last one. It's like sometimes you have to declutter your home in order to just like make room to even start to declutter your physical.
Yeah.
Your little body.
Yeah. But it was it's one of those things though that's you said to me, and it has forever. It's amazing, those things that sort of land so deeply in your core that a friend or a mentor, any teacher says. And I still sometimes will have these moments before I start to clean. I'll just a little gentle ask, why are you cleaning, Gina?
Yeah.
I've
actually been doing that a lot lately.
Really?
Well, I had an interesting experience with my partner who was coming home from a job. Mm-hmm. And I was like totally relaxed and chill until I found out he was coming home. And I was like, clean the house, stock the fridge. Like, we were already on our way out, and like there's no reason why I need to make this home incredibly presentable and welcoming and open, and comfortable just for you, when it was perfectly fine for me prior. It's this like deep-seated thing that I do, and it wasn't just particular to him. It's like certain people in my life. And those are the things where I have to start to sit down and go, oh, okay, where did that come from? Where and why? And it's all ego. There's like this space in me that I'm holding, like, I want this person to think this way about, or like, I am perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Even though I'm like the farthest fucking thing from it, and he knows, they all know, they know. Yeah. And yet I'm like sitting here going, but if the floor is spotless, they'll think I am like really great.
100% And you know what was wild? God, I'm having a moment right now with you. Because I remember I would sit back as a kid and I'd watch my mom furiously just clean the house before her mother came over and, smashing pillows and doing all the things with this really frenetic, intense energy. And I just remember going like, fuck, you're possessed. What is actually going on with you? And
did she get angry too, though, when it was happening?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why aren't you cleaning too?
Oh, and then she'd start barking at Joe and I like, you're spoiled little shits and you need to be cleaning the bathroom with me. And we just sit there like, oh my God, okay. And, but it's so interesting talking this out right now. She so badly wanted to be seen by her mom. Her mom was crazy emotionally abusive to her. And my mom was never good enough to her. And she was only pretty, but she was dumb. And, so anytime Grandma Mimi came over, it was, how flawless can I make this house look? How amazing.
Look how well I'm doing, Mom.
Look at how well I'm doing, Mom.
Yeah.
Check out my roast in the oven and check out my kids. And,
how together I am.
Yeah.
Inside I am melting. Outside I look perfect. And yet back to the honesty thing, and like you said, sitting with yourself and sitting there and knowing it and seeing it and seeing the road of all of it. I still fucking do it.
Yeah.
I still am like, why didn't you wash the dishes? I'm like, there's one fucking dish in the thing. Yeah. It's like, nobody gives a fuck, really. Yeah. It's going to get washed eventually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yet I carry these things and having to still sit with it every single time. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm like, maybe at this blasting, I'm going to not call it that. I'm totally kidding, by the way, when I say that. But this is how you and I talk.
Yeah, yes.
But maybe, going to sit with this medicine, it's like I can take a deeper intrinsic look at like those roots of like, I know I've identified where, a lot of this comes from in me. Mm-hmm. Maybe I hadn't made the correlation to my mom or, I think in my case, it'd probably be my grandma. Mm-hmm. But I still, it's like, I don't think it's about that correlation so much as it is every time it happens, I can identify it, but then, it's like, what is the daily active practice? I'm not looking for a quick fix, but I'm looking for like something that's going to go, that I don't have to sit and go, why did I need to clean the floor this day? Like every time. I don't want that. I'm tired. I think that's, or is that how you have to do it? Is that just it?
I'm going to go with, I haven't been a therapist for 80 years, but long enough that, I think we do. We become so deeply hardwired.
Do you think it's just slowly deconstructing the hardwiring?
100%. And becoming really present with it and becoming really compassionate and
finding that compassion. It's like, I'm still going to berate myself when I sit down, and I'm maybe not with this kind of self-talk. Maybe I need to check my self-talk truly.
Yeah.
But it's like, I can't sit there I can't.
Yeah. If there's that dish in the sink.
It's like not even a dish. It's, I don't know. It's like there's certain things I really struggle. I struggle with those things.
Well, it's interesting. As you and I were talking, I was thinking about body stuff and aging and Yeah, being a female therapist too, and it's interesting. Some people will say to me, "Oh, it's because you're a therapist in LA. Everybody's like a body focused and, image is everything." I'm like, nah. I talk to people from all over the world and all over the country, and that is one still. I mean, still. I was saying this to Jonas the other day. I went, wow, if you really knew some of the things that I said inside my mind
Yeah,
about
to yourself.
myself. Yeah. And I also, Lee, am trying to, that's a hard one because it
Yeah.
feels almost fake. And I've talked about this with a lot of my clients where, like, what's her name? Byron Katie. There's a lot of mirror work, right? Like putting a post-it on your
Mhm.
mirror that says, I am beautiful. My body is beautiful. I accept aging. And there's this part of me that's really just like, that's not going to fucking work.
Yeah.
It's so deeply entrenched in me and it's collective and it's learned. And, but it's interesting talking this out with you. I think that is actually it.
Yeah. No, and okay. I'm sorry again, my dog's
Oh,
going.
Honey Bear's just going off.
Honey Bear. I think that, raising two daughters and watching them become young women, like my oldest, Layla, 14, she's, so beautiful. Like there's this, real awareness of herself all of a sudden. She's coming into like, if I do this kind of makeup, my face looks like this, my body looks like this, if I wear these kinds of clothes. And yet they're also being raised in such a time where it's like there's gender neutrality and there's this sort of I don't know, almost like a revolt against this, artists like Billie Eilish and who is now also evolving into like being more feminine. But there's just a lot of other influence, I feel like, for them that allows them to kind of not have the same standardized beauty ideals that maybe we were raised with. And I'm watching like, Gigi, for example, like cut her hair a certain way and like wear much more masculine clothing. And she feels way more comfortable in her like body and her skin and her like being that I did at that age. I mean, I don't know. Well, both of them. And I just wonder, is this something that is more of a, not to say like it is only our generation. I know that young girls across the board are highly affected. Look at fucking TikTok, for example, by like, beauty standards. But I see them feeling much more accepting of each other and like different sizing and it's just the standard feels different. And so, when I say things inward or outward, and, sometimes it's just three of us, oftentimes it's just three of us, and, we're running around naked. And if I say something negative about my body, both my girls are like, excuse me, what? Don't you know? This is what's up. You need a little more fluff. Where's the like, it's just, there's this thing of just going, own your shit, mom. Like, own it. And I'm going, how is it that they're telling me to own my shit when I'm supposed to be telling them to own their shit? But that's the mirror right there.
I was going to say that was the most beautiful example of the mirror. And, and children being your teacher versus...
Totally. And then having to really take a hard look and go like, what is it that I'm actually focusing on? And does it actually matter?
Yes.
It's not about, it doesn't matter, but it does still, because it's the energy felt when you are outside on the street. It's like we've reached this age where suddenly you're kind of crossing over and the young boy isn't looking at you the same. They might be looking at you like you're his mom's friend. And that's a weird place to be. It's just like it's like almost puberty all over again. Because, it's like, wait a minute, this older gentleman checked me out versus, Layla was talking about this the other day, like going to the store and feeling like people were looking at her different. And I'm like, that happens. And I remember how awkward that was, but also kind of thrilling, but also confusing. And now I feel like at almost 40, I'm experiencing it all over again. I'm like, pretty sure that guy's 80. Somehow I seem to be in his dating pool. I'm not quite sure what's going on.
The 80-year-old's really giving me a vibe right now.
Yeah, big time. And then, and then realizing like, oh, that 20-year-old is definitely checking out my daughter, that's real. Yeah. And that's also, not that I want to hang out with a 20-year-old, but
it's
just that like I'm sure this all sounds so fucking superficial, but it's this reality that we're being honest about, or I'm being honest about. Like I'm aware that there's an energy flux and change. Mm-hmm. And it's neither good nor bad. It's just new. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And an adjustment.
Mm-hmm. I mean, to your point, I think I shared this story with you when my therapist, Sharon, who I saw for years, and she said to me at one point, she goes, Gina, because I was talking to her, living in LA, and I was like, God, you walk into a fucking Whole Foods and like everybody's a supermodel and nobody has a line and perky tits and perky booties. And she goes, and then you hit a point, Gina, and she said, I was walking on the soccer field with my daughter. And all of the male gaze she was like, I was thinking, woof, yeah, I've aged well. And I'm walking along and she was like, and it was all for my daughter. And she said, and to your point, it was, and I love how you said this, it's an energy shift if mm-hmm. we don't allow it and our ego to dominate, that we need that validation of the male gaze. Because as much as women will go, I do it for myself. Maybe, I'm not going to negate that. We all want to feel good. And there's a certain amount of like what we put out into the world. But
so much of our energy too is from other women. Like we are all kind of going in like, there's a reason why they hold those freaking, 20, 30-year-old high school reunions and people are going to God knows what extent to show up looking fine. It's like, you don't want to be the guy who gained 60 and is bald. Like, although there's nothing wrong
with that.
But the way I just said it said that I feel internally that everything is wrong with that. Because I must be a shallow bitch. My true insides. I hate that.
But again, truth. I think it's and it's a hard truth, and I think one that people just don't talk about, frankly. And as I see,
so I'm sitting here horrified with myself.
Both of us. But you know what?
But it's honest.
But it's honest.
I'm being honest.
Yeah, it's honest, and it's also it's the nature of how the world has been set up and the animal kingdom. If you even think about a peacock, right? Isn't it the male peacock, when the male peacock expresses his feathers, and the feathers are like these beautiful, ornate, for some reason, I don't know why, but nature decided the female peacock was sort of like, brown and
not green.
Not green and fabulous. But even within the natural world, though, there's that something about.
Well, it's like when animals get too old, they either get killed off or left behind, or there's a real pack mentality that is very much, societally alive, that stems from ancient times. And this is a conversation I was having the other day, actually. It's like there's a lot that's in our DNA that is, kind of just there.
Yeah.
I don't know, again, kind of coming into this, like we were discussing, going into this ceremony and things like that, really trying hard not to assign things as good or bad, right or wrong, like knowing that things exist. And then knowing that there's a whole way of viewing things that enables emotion and compassion and empathy. Mm-hmm. those don't really exist in those early primitive
Yes. Yeah.
structures.
Yeah.
You know, it was like kill or be killed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So on. And I think that as we've kind of evolved and are clearly continuing to evolve,
working on it
in ourselves, it's like, you know, these are the intrinsic battles. These are the things that are kind of like the final days of like, okay, what is it in this? Do these things really matter? Maybe they do. Maybe they should be taken into consideration. Maybe we need to be like staying with vitality to a certain extent for our own prosperity. Maybe looking in the mirror, that does bring you joy. Maybe there's something in that should also be considered, and not classifying it as this is good or this is bad. Mm-hmm. This is an energy shift. This is a struggle that I've been mulling over, something that I'm considering versus
damn it.
Send me the Botox.
Okay, we're off the rails. Hold on. I'm turning on the light. Okay, so where do I want to go from here? Where do you want to go, Lee?
Oh, I don't know. I was just having a little sit as you were turning the light on, a moment of thinking about how, I really am curious how, talking about what I did with my daughter, how she'll feel about that. And then I was also really asking myself, did I segue into her trauma to avoid dealing with my trauma? Because I didn't really voice, what happened to me. I didn't really voice what happened to her. But sometimes I just wonder, am I being my authentic self? This is, I think, the theme of this conversation for you and I, authentic self. Mm-hmm. And for me, I think that also it comes back to that abandonment of self. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What's easier? Mm-hmm. I almost feel like when you have the capacity to philosophize and understand a lot, it's almost harder to turn that reflection back inward. Mm-hmm. I would say from a very young age, I became like an unintended master manipulator. Mm-hmm. Really good at making other people feel good, asking other people important questions. Mm-hmm. Really bad at doing that with myself. Mm-hmm. And even if I do, I'm really bad at being honest about it.
Which is, I think, why you're going to go do Aya. Because I think that the grandmother is going to guide you to a space of being really honest with yourself. And I think going back to what you were saying, that getting the access in, and maybe you need some help to go there and really be in truth with yourself. And then from that point, doing the integration work after, and doing the things like when you're cleaning, or maybe talking about your fluffy bod, or whatever, that you can also slow down and kind of go, well, what is my truth here? And is this hurting me? Is this loving and authentic? But I think it's the dance that we're all doing. What are you giggling about?
I'm sitting here just going, and yep, yes. But also, as I'm thinking on our conversation we just had, and I'm like, wow, it is so hard to get to access those things and have get to that level of work, I think, because that vulnerability that it takes through honesty is like actually really, I'm giggling because it's like everything we just talked about was it seemed relatively maybe superficial.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting here going, am I really that superficial? Like, do I really think like that? And I don't think I do. And I don't think that this is how I feel. And this isn't how, but at the same time, it's like, these are things that are also needing to be expressed. These are things that need to be getting, they need to get out. And back to your point of like going and doing that work and doing the ayahuasca, I really do think it's like a means of real healing. Like when you can't get to the bottom of something, it's like, I don't know. I've sat, Gina, for so long in like just trying to sit with self, like getting to the bottom of like, what is it? What is that? What is that work? Like, what is the work? And it's just not, it hasn't been clear.
I mean, I keep feeling this compulsion to say, I think it's the balance always of doing the work and also just being. And something that my newer therapist, and as I told you, hypnotherapist that I'm working with, she said to me, she goes, Gina, something that bothers me so much in the spiritual world these days is all of the doing, and all of the deep kind of almost like excessive seeking. And feeling like there's always layers to pull back and there's always more work to do and there's always more to be healed versus just being with. And then interestingly enough, when I went through a hypnosis session with her and she was telling me, what was that?
I'm dying to hear about these.
Yeah. I mean, and just, quickly, she wanted me to think of an image of someone who was my higher self. And I love that Ram Dass came through. And within the hypnosis, he just said to me, do less, be more. And I don't know if it was something that I had just pulled from one of his quotes, that I had like read through the years, but it was I felt it so deeply. And because I think, and this about me, I can be very frenetic about, and it's also the critical side of me and how hard I can be on myself, that it's like, Gina, you could do better. You can do more. You can be kinder to other people, and you should be kinder to yourself. So you should do all these things and you're not doing it right enough. And that is where in that moment, I had I was laying on the ground and she said something along the lines, and when I was talking to Ram Dass and then Leslie was saying, and I just felt the beingness of just laying there.
It's funny, as you were saying, I'm like, and then it is just being.
Yeah.
It is just this moment right now.
Yeah.
And I know you and I have come to that conclusion time and time again. And, whatever vehicle it takes to get you there, that's the truth. That's the reality. This is reality. We can, the work is like, I think what comes up after being in reality long enough to stay in reality. It's hard.
It's really hard. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I think this, or I've shared the Aubrey Marcus podcast with you, and something Jonas always loves to blow the horn on is, and I was being kind of shitty one day and I was like, oh, if you were more like Aubrey Marcus doing the deep work, such like a Gina moment of high criticism. And, and he was like, yeah, but don't you think there's something out of balance with somebody who is excessively seeking and excessively trying to get to this higher plane of existence versus just being, and which is why we're good together, because we're neutralizing in the sense of I push him and then he kind of slows me down and neutralizes that space. Yeah, I think it all comes back to the being, as you and I are sitting here, and even within that there's like a little bit of like discomfort in my body as we're talking about just the simplicity of just being.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Because so back to like that time we were in the car and we had that, you know, I keep wanting to just call it an awakening. I'm just
Mhm.
going to call it that because
Yeah.
I don't want to lessen it.
Yeah.
But it's that level of being, that level of being awake
Mhm.
to the point where you're so hyper aware of everything around you. And to the point that it's hard to drive a car.
Mhm.
The point that it's like you're looking around and you're like, whoa, people are on autopilot.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to do this thing because there's a part of me that knows that I am on autopilot.
Mhm.
And the part of me that knows that I'm on autopilot doesn't want to be on fucking autopilot.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I don't know. Like why, when I say the let go, the just be, the all the things I saw with you, it's like it's almost this like all of that can also feel like so much pressure when you know it exists. Like when you know you're not doing it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's like, yes, it's a daily practice. Is it? I don't know. Just,
Mhm.
I guess that's the beginning, knowing that you don't know.
Yes. And I love, as I'm feeling like we're kind of nearing the end, I love that. And also the idea, and I think that's something that's really also missing in the spiritual world, or I don't know if missing is the right word, but there's an overblown sense of knowing, right? Knowing. And I do think that there are some really wise beings, really, really wise beings, and who maybe are more tapped in with the truth of what it is to be a human being and being on the path, but also that a lot of us really just don't know. And we're all figuring it out in this incarnation. Yeah. And I always go back to, I heard this from somebody who said, you don't come to Earth to get it right.
University Earth, man.
University Earth. Yeah. Yeah. Of course, I think things like murdering and other such heinous acts against humanity are, would be wrong.
Vibrational frequencies is what it is. It's like, yeah. That's the weirdest thing. It's like you can access all this information, I think, through meditation. Really going deep and going, if you sit and meditate and think about, the darkness in the world, you'll get answers. You'll get an understanding. And if you think about the beauty in the world, you equally get an understanding. And there's a real simplicity, I think, around all of it. We make it complicated. And that's the hardest thing. It's like or maybe it's the simplest thing. I'm not quite sure. It's a commitment to the deconstruction of the commitment to, God, we just came full circle all the time.
Right.
I find a slow practice to get big change. Damn it.
This is what we do.
I want to talk to you after I'm done with this thing so that I can tell you.
Yeah. I would
tell you how it went and what my experience was and whether or not, the little silly slap in the face. I mean, I might get completely different information, who knows what I go in thinking I want to work on this kind of thing. And it's like, that might not be it at all.
Yeah. Very much so. I think what I have heard is she gives you what you need. So,
I heard she gives it to you in riddles. I'm really interested in that puzzle.
Okay. All right. I can't wait. I can't wait to hear. And I do want to ask you my little rapid fire questions as we wrap up. First question, you know this, Beyonce or Rihanna?
Oh, Beyonce.
Okay. Next question.
I love them both.
Yeah. Okay. No. And I always want people to know it's not me pitting against one or the other, but
great.
What was that?
Both great.
Both great. But some of us are more of a Beyonce or Riri woman. Okay, next question. Why do you think that we are here on this planet, and why, Eulalie, are you here on this planet?
I'm here to learn, and I'm here to teach these children. Definitely, they're a huge aspect of why I came here, choosing that. And I know that there's some real work to do in helping this earth, helping the earth heal and helping each other heal. Connection.
Yes. That's
That was really fast.
No. That's great. That's what I, okay. And a statement or a sentence or something, a teacher, mentor, something somebody said to you that it just kind of like reverberates in your mind space.
Wow. Let go is really the biggest one. It's like a constant mantra. Shelly and I used to call, it's my you say like a spiritual healer, I'm like my sister. But truly, my sister and I used to call each other when we were younger, because we've gone in and out of having these like spiritual awakenings throughout our whole life, and kind of being aware of being awake and feeling like, she was my, person I could call and be like, Shelly, hey, wake up. You awake? Are you though? And then she'd do it to me and I'd be like, damn it, you're right. I've been sleeping. Fuck. Okay.
I did not know that about you two.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Since we were like, I don't know. I remember having like a big one at 16. Wow. So she must have been, what, 12.
Are you awake? 12-year-old? Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for real, like really admit.
Yeah.
So let go and wake up.
Okay. Very last question. What do you think happens after death?
Rebirth. Or I think what people think purgatory is actually a holding station where we do a little decompressing and then go on to either another body here or another planet. I think that even when you decide not to be born back into a body, you still come back, like you were saying, like the Ram Dasas or the Paramahansa Yoganandas, the Buddhas. I think we come back in a other dimensional spiritual form in order to continue the work, but in a different way.
Do you ever have moments, and again, I could be projecting my shit onto you, where when I think about that, I go,
oh, 100%. That's why this one's supposed to be so fun. We're supposed to be enjoying this life.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be light, because I think that you have way more conceptual awareness, maybe on a bigger level.
Yeah.
Outside of here.
Yeah.
I think it's a place where it's like, there's a good one. I read this in this book this one time, and I cannot find this book for the life of me. A, because I can't remember the name of the book or the author. Just great, just typical. But it was like this whole first like chapter was about this dream state this guy was in, and it was talking about how souls are crying out to come to planet Earth to have fruition. It's about having the beginning to end cycle, because exterior is, outside is not that. And I do truly believe that, we are fractals of God, experiencing God. And that can be experienced in any kind of way. And I just don't think that, outside of here, we have the same emotional standard of like, that feels good or bad. I think it's much more objective. I think it's much more, it's all happening. It's just, here we get to feel it on the spectrum. So maybe that's a good note to self, to just keep it light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard though sometimes to keep,
yeah. Well, it's the energy we put into it. It's the energy we get out of it.
Yeah.
And, now I'm going to go into like all the sayings and time, but that's something I truly do believe. It's like what kind of energy do we put into these things? And that's where I feel like I've been trying to, not to keep talking, but like really trying to operate differently in exiting relationship, and like doing so in with much more loving awareness and kindness. That we have a certain amount of responsibility to the people we entangle ourselves with. And I do think it's a matter of like holding space for each other, even when it's really painful and hard to do. Because they go out into the world and have their own relationships, and whatever they're reeling from or healing from is going to then cause a similar experience. So that's our work too.
And taking ownership. I think the last thing I'll say is, taking ownership of the energy that we put out into the world I've been thinking about this a lot lately. And as you're saying, in ending relationship, and responsibility, I think, and accountability. That's something humans need to really think about more energetically, the ripple effects of, our words, our actions, and that butterfly effect from all of it. And as you said, this entanglement with certain beings and certain souls that we were meant to collide with, and even if they're not meant to be in our life for, the entire...
Well, in the structure we think they are. I think that's the other thing. It's like when we say deconstruct, it's like actually, this is why it's so hard and exhausting. It's like you're having to deconstruct not just like one thing. It's everything. It is everything. And then you come into like your like we were talking about earlier, your personal, self things. It's just like, when does the work end? I don't think it does. I think it's all work.
It's all work. But in the meantime, we're going to dance to Beyonce
and
play and surf. And and you and I sure know how to fucking laugh, and we do have a good time. So to everyone listening, do the work and have a good time. And I think that's it. It's the balance of all of that. Oh shit, you froze for a second. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. And thank you for being on Spaces Between. Yes. And
thanks for having me.
And friends and everybody listening, look forward to some future retreats that Lee and I will be holding together. That will also be an offering down the road. So I love you, babe.
I love you too, honey.
Hi, friends. If you have been enjoying Spaces Between, please take a moment to subscribe, and leaving a review is the cherry on top. Thank you so much, and I look forward to connecting with you next week.